The middle. It exists in every organization, large or small, public or private, for-profit or non-profit. It's where the work gets done. It's the 80 in your 80-20. The middle doesn't include those folks that are brand new to the work world, nor does it include the CEO or whatever title is included by that singular position at the top of the organization. Years ago, I was in a bookstore, and I looked down the aisle and I found all these books to help people get started in their careers. I looked in another section and I found all these books about one job, the CEO. And I thought, what about the rest of us? See, the middle is the rest of us. It's folks like you and I that have been around long enough to have won and lost, to have experienced victory and endured defeat. But those of us that are new enough to still have robust hopes, dreams, and aspirations. See, the middle pays attention. The middle sees and hears more than one might think. It thinks more than one might admit. And it's capable of more than we can possibly imagine. The middle is as diverse as the world. It includes people from every walk of life, every race, creed, color, gender, orientation, background, career field, or any other dimension you can imagine. There are folks in the middle that are incredibly confident. There are others that are more notably competent. There are folks that are capable and others that can barely get by. There are folks in the middle that behave well, and there's some that don't. There are specialists in the middle, those folks that know a lot about a little. There are generalists in the middle, those folks that know a little bit about a lot. There are those special few that truly do know a lot about a lot. And I'm guessing we've all met folks that really don't know much about anything. See, the middle is incredibly diverse. It's a rich tapestry. And those differences create a tremendous amount of potential. But through all those differences and all that diversity, there are common hopes, there are common dreams, there are common thoughts, and there are common themes. Success and balance are two themes that I've heard over and over and over in my over 30 years of dealing with folks and living in and working in the middle. Success is an interesting thing because everybody wants it, but we all define it differently. Some of us define success purely in work terms. Others define success purely in terms of their family, their social interests, their sports teams, their hobbies, or any other dimensions you can imagine. Some folks define success by simply getting through the next minute, the next hour, or the next day. Other folks have grander, more global definitions of success. Organizations also have definitions of success. Some of them are robust, they're well articulated, and they're very well communicated. Others, not so much. They're less formal, maybe not communicated at all, beyond the behaviors and norms that are expected in those organizations. For people and organizations to achieve their true potential and get to success, there has to be a recognition of all those definitions and some balancing of all the factors that impact them. There's a scientific theorem that says systems seek equilibrium, that state where opposing forces are in balance. People and organizations always seek balance. Whether it's work-life balance, the balance between short-term return and long-term sustainability, cost, benefit, risk, reward, challenge, opportunity. We all seek balance. So if everybody's looking for it, how do we find it? Years ago, an aviator friend of mine talked to me about the forces that impact flight. I'm not a pilot. I haven't stayed at a Holiday Inn Express recently, but I took his word for it, and I hope you will too. The forces that impact flight, apparently, are lift and thrust and weight and drag. Lift and thrust are those positive forces that cause an aircraft to gain altitude and move forward. Weight and drag are the opposing forces that hinder altitude and hold one back from its forward progress. I heard the model and I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. And the more I thought about it, the more it resonated with the message that I keep hearing from the middle. We need balance. There's many factors that impact the ability to balance. There's three that I think are worth talking about today. Position, priority, and paying attention. See, folks in the middle, from everything I've heard, understand that organizations have positions of authority, some more formal than others. And folks in the middle, they pay attention. They see folks that sit in those seats behave. They look to see if they're just wearing the title and offering platitudes in the name of encouragement, and when they abdicate in the name of empowerment. When that happens, weight and drag are introduced to the equation, and it holds people and organizations back from the success potential that they all have and the levels of success they all seek. When people in positions of authority, however, demonstrate good leadership, they help people understand the right things to do. When they're good managers, they help people understand and enable them to do those right things the right way. Amazing lift and thrust is provided to the people and the organization. The second P is priority. To get priority right, you have to have two things: clarity and consistency. I imagine we've all been in a circumstance, maybe more than once, where we're just not really sure what's important. It's not clear what we're supposed to be doing, what direction we're supposed to go in. You know, folks in the middle understand the difference between being busy and adding value. And if whoever's wearing the title and in that position of authority pays attention and sees that folks really don't understand the value, it's incumbent upon them to take time, invest the time to add the clarity, help folks understand where the value is so people can move forward and do what needs to be done. Consistency is critical. A while ago, a lady told me about an experience she had. She took a new job and she was really excited about it. She had the opportunity to work on the project of a lifetime. She tackled that project diligently. She worked hard, spent long hours. She did all the right stuff. She was just about ready to deliver that project, and her boss came in and said, "Nope, sorry, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to go do this instead." She was shocked, but she jumped on that other priority with the same fervor. And not too terribly long thereafter, someone said, "Guess what? We're not doing that. We're going to go do this instead." It exhausted her. She shared with me that she just felt she was playing whack-a-mole. I haven't talked to her in a while, but I understand she stayed with the company. But what she told me is, from that experience, she never again gave 100% to any priority. Because she knew she had to save some energy for that next thing that was going to surely pop up out of nowhere. Consistency is important to priorities. Of the three P's here, I would suggest that simply paying attention has the most potential positive impact and the most potential for damage. A gentleman shared a story with me where he started a new job and he was excited. He goes in on the first day and finds out his boss had to leave for a business trip. The person that was orienting him, onboarding him, making sure he had all the paperwork done, kind of took a haphazard approach to it. Didn't really seem to care much that this gentleman was there. When all the administrivia was concluded, she walked the gentleman over, showed him where the time clock was, then parked him in his cube and handed him a whole bunch of papers. He had been ignored. He had been dismissed. A day or two later, the boss came back from his business trip, and he's excited to meet his new employee. And he was shocked that this employee wasn't doing cartwheels of joy to be there. The person had been ignored. The weight and the drag of that initial experience set him so far back that he never recovered. He left the company. He went on to another company that valued him, that paid attention, that listened. It's important when you're paying attention to folks to understand where they are on the overload limit. Everybody here works hard, I imagine, yeah? Sometimes your load gets heavy. It's important that folks pay attention to each other. And if you're a person in a position of authority, you're paying attention to the load level of all our people. We've often heard it said that work here is kind of like a sprint. You got to run fast. We sometimes hear that, no, it's a marathon. The unfortunate reality is in way too many cases, people are being asked to sprint the entire length of a marathon. Look at the heads going up and down. Oh yeah, that happens. I'd like to offer a different approach. The road march method, I'll call it. Those of you that have road marched, you know what I'm about to say. Those of you that have backpacked with a heavy load or hiked with a heavy load, you know roughly what I'm about to say. See, in a well-done road march, you start from a known point, you prepare well, you carry a heavy load, you have a known course, challenging though it may be, you have a known destination, and you move out smartly. You got to walk quickly because there's work to be done. But the key differentiator here is in every well-done road march, you build in a break. A break to check your feet and change your socks. When you're sprinting a marathon, it's impossible to stop and check your feet and change your socks. You got to pay attention to your people. You got to understand where they are in their level of overload. And you got to build in those breaks. Let them check their feet and change their socks. Paying attention also means remembering that people have a life outside of work. We talked work-life balance earlier. See, folks in the middle, by and large, love their iPhones or Androids, their tablets or their iPads, the laptops. We today have more technological ability to do things in new and unique and interesting ways than any generation before us. And that's awesome, right up until the point where those tools become anchors. When your work world starts interrupting you at 10:30 on Friday night. Hey, I was just thinking about whatever. Can you help me with? Or 2:30 Saturday afternoon, you get the email blast. Or the dreaded 7 a.m. Sunday morning message from the boss says, hey, I was just thinking about the last week and I'd like to plan for next week. Give me a call. See, when that starts to happen, you're not paying attention to people. You're just focused on the results and the business need, and that does not provide lift and thrust. It doesn't help motivate people to achieve their potential. Years ago, I was in a relatively tough spot. It was 1992. I was with the Army in their Hurricane Andrew relief operations. Through a set of circumstances, I wound up being responsible for 3 pretty big jobs. My boss at the time demonstrated all the very best of what we just talked about here. He paid attention. He knew his position. and he was able to prioritize. Pretty much every morning, he'd wake me up. We were living in the remnants of a blown-down subdivision in South Dade County. We lived and worked out of tents. Pretty much every morning, he'd walk by and kick my cot way too early, and he'd be standing there with 2 cups of coffee. He'd say, "Come on, young captain, let's go." Okay. So we got up and we went to the canal that abutted the subdivision. And when the alligators weren't there, we'd take a seat and hang out for a while. And we'd spend 20, 30 minutes talking. And he always started by asking about me. "How you doing? You okay? I know you got a heavy load. Have you talked to your family recently? Everything okay with them?" Wow, that provided lift and thrust. Then we talked about our priorities, our overall mission. What are we here to do? What's our current status? What are the right things to do today? And how are we going to go about doing them right? He played his position. He prioritized. But most importantly, he paid attention. He paid attention to a guy who was in a tough spot, who was clearly overloaded. And he caused me to be successful. Successful for my terms, successful to help the organization achieve its mission, and thus successful in being able to provide the assistance that so many people needed. As we leave here today, I'd ask you to think about how you can help folks achieve success and balance. What are those factors that are influencing success and balance in your world and in the world of the people around you? How can you influence the circumstance to help? And when doing that, I'll suggest the very first thing to do is listen. Just listen to the messages from the middle. Thank you.